Crossover movies have long held a special place in my heart. They offer the amazing prospect of witnessing some awesome characters from different franchises collide on the big screen. While some crossovers like Freddy vs. Jason and Glass did not meet expectations, stuff like Spider-Man No Way Home has brought dreams to life. There are still plenty of incredible crossover ideas that remain unmade today. In this video, we will explore the top 12 incredible crossover movies that need to be made immediately, and you can let me know which one intrigued you the most. Let's begin, shall we? But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. Batman meets Godzilla. Batman Meets Godzilla is an unproduced comedy film that would have brought together the campy charm of the 1966 Adam West version of Batman and the roaring might of Godzilla. Commissioner Gordon and his daughter Barbara set sail on a relaxing vacation to the Far East, but little did they know that what awaited them was an obnoxiousness and absurdity with a bit of hilarity and mayhem. The overarching antagonist of the film was Klaus Finster, the quirky German meteorologist with an outlandish scheme to destroy Japan using, you guessed it, weather control. Somehow this man went from forecasting the weather to world domination, and of course his lair was beneath Mount Fuji. Commissioner Gordon, ever the resourceful but dependent cop, decides there's only one solution, calling in the dynamic duo. So Batman and Robin are summoned to save the day, complete with their signature crime-fighting style and corny one-liners. But here's the twist, Finster isn't controlling the weather at all. Instead, he's the puppet master of the mighty Godzilla. With the fate of Japan hanging in the balance, Batman and Robin must face their most epic foe yet, a rogue wave of destruction, and of course, the king of the monsters himself. Meanwhile, in a true kabuki twist, chaos ensues during a show-turned sword fight that leaves even robots bewildered. Oh, and Barbara's old friend Reiko turns up to be a well-crafted spy robot because, well, why not? The good guys then find themselves car chase, complete with a taxi torture chamber. Hey, Gotham traffic has nothing on this, but fear not, Batgirl to the rescue. Barbara dons her Batgirl attire and brings her pocket-sized blowtorch to melt her way out of trouble. Go, Batgirl, go! As Batman suspects Godzilla's involvement, they watch some epic clips of the giant lizard's battle with King Kong and takes note on how to beat the mighty kaiju. In a climatic showdown, our terrific trio devises a clever plan involving a Godzilla mating call and strategic explosives. Let's just say it's a blast in every sense of the word. Godzilla thought he was going to get laid that night, but Batman had booked him a solo trip to space instead. With Finster's nefarious plot foiled and Godzilla sent soaring into orbit, yes, you heard that right, and he never returned. Or did he? Pacific Rim meets Godzilla and King Kong. I think speculative cinema should be made a genre in its own. Pacific Rim 1 was released in 2013, and the next year we had Godzilla up and running into theaters, destroying box office records and collections. Naturally, fans couldn't help but imagine an epic crossover between the Pacific Rim series and the MonsterVerse franchise, which includes the likes of Godzilla, King Kong, King Ghidorah, etc. In fact, in Godzilla vs. Kong, we couldn't help but be reminded of Pacific Rim's Hong Kong, which bore an immense likeness to the battle when the mighty Godzilla swan through the water in his glorious neon light. Rumors abound, and Pacific Rim Uprising's director Stephen S. DeKnight has somewhat hinted in the past about discussions concerned with merging the Kaiju-verse and MonsterVerse. Imagine the thrill of seeing Jaeger pilots taking on the iconic Kaiju duo of Godzilla and King Kong in an explosive battle royale. There's another striking similarity between the two universes. In the Pacific Rim series, the concept of drifting is a fundamental aspect of operating the massive Jaeger robots. The process involves two pilots linking their minds through a neural bridge to synchronize their movements and control the Jaeger in perfect harmony. This mind-melding connection allows them to share memories, emotions, and behavioral patterns, creating a seamless bond between humans and their machines. In Godzilla vs. Kong, we witness a similar and equally mind-bending concept known as the neural uplink. When Bernie, Madison, and Josh break into Apex Cybernetics' underground chambers, they stumble upon the Mecha Godzilla. To control this formidable robot, the tech-savvy Ren Serizawa uses a neural uplink helmet, uploading his consciousness into the mechanical mind of Mecha Godzilla. This high-tech connection allows Ren to synchronize his thoughts and actions with a monstrous machine. While nothing is set in stone, the idea of opening the gateway between the Pacific Rim and MonsterVerse dimensions has captured the imagination of even director Guillermo del Toro, the man responsible for bringing Jaegers to life. So, for now, we'll just have to keep dreaming and discussing an electrifying and interdimensional Kaiju Titan showdown. Wishful thinking, I suppose. X-Men vs. Fantastic Four. According to The Hollywood Reporter, Fox considered pitting the X-Men against the Fantastic Four in a Civil War-style movie. The report indicates Johnny Storm or the Human Torch would have inadvertently blown a hole in Manhattan while trying to catch Molecule Man. This would have led to the Superhero Registration Act, like the one seen in Mark Millar and Steve McNiven's Civil War storyline. Split into opposing sides, the movie would have seen a battle between Wolverine and Mr. Fantastic, with the latter pinning the former down and extending his hands until they're one molecule wide and using them as scissors to cut the mutant's arms off. Knowing Wolverine would have grown back, but it would have been something to watch. The heroes would have eventually made peace, but the post-credits scene would have teased another major comics event, Secret Invasion. But we got that anyway as a miniseries, didn't we? As stunts revealed, born filmmaker Paul Greengrass was being eyed to direct, and the project never came to fruition due to the success of 2011's X-Men First Class. Marvel Studios eventually gave its own take on Miller and McNiven's comic with Captain America Civil War. Rights to Marvel heroes like Fantastic Four and the X-Men were previously held by Fox, but they're not anymore, so they're more than fair game for future Marvel Studios films. Michael Myers versus Pinhead. This could have been the ultimate horror showdown until it didn't. Imagine a clash of horror type, a gruesome dance between the masked killer Michael Myers from Haddonfield and the sadomasochistic Cenobite Pinhead. The cinematic dream of this epic Halloween crossover first appeared in the minds of horror enthusiasts back in the 90s, rightfully intriguing fans, with a prospect of blood-soaked battles and spine-chilling encounters. Filmmaker Dave Parker, having previously pitched the idea of Freddy vs. Jason, set his sights on an equally outrageous face-off between Michael and Pinhead. His vision involved the tale of Michael inadvertently becoming the host for the Lord of the Dead, Sam Hain, after toying with the Lament configuration, the puzzle that summons the Cenobites. But alas, the horror deities of Dimension Films were not yet ready for such an unholy union. They shelved the idea, probably wondering if they'd ever see a Versus title that didn't involve divorce proceedings. However, their spirits were rekindled by the success of Freddy vs. Jason, which opened doors to horror crossovers. With Pinhead's brief flirtation with Freddy vs. Jason on the table, the possibilities were endless. Dimension Films reached out to the masters of terror themselves, Clive Barker and John Carpenter, which obviously added fuel to the monstrous fire of anticipation. Clive Barker envisioned a deeper narrative than just a mano-a-mano smackdown. He saw potential in exploring the twisted landscapes where Hellraiser and Halloween intersected. As the stars seemed to align for this horror extravaganza, a dark shadow loomed over the project. Mustafa Akkad, the longtime producer and owner of the Halloween franchise, was vehemently opposed to the crossover. Despite the rallying cries of horror fans, it seemed the heavens were not quite ready for this unholy matrimony of terror. Alas, the dreams of witnessing Michael Myers face off against Pinhead remained unfulfilled, but who knows what the future holds. Blade vs. Morbius. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe where superheroes and villains alike come to life, there was once, and maybe still, a possibility lurking in the shadows of a face-off between two bloodthirsty heroes, Blade and Morbius. With Mahershala Ali set to play the suave vampire hunter Blade, and Jared Leto as the living vampire Morbius, the film could be something of a big deal if it is ever made. As the MCU continues to weave its intricate web of interconnected stories, the possibilities of such a crossover is not entirely alien. After all, in a universe where even Kraven the Hunter gets a shot at the limelight, it's only fitting that Blade and Morbius share the spotlight. Hey, did you check out our anatomy video in Kraven yet? We know that Dr. Michael Morbius is a pseudo-vampire who finds himself cursed after a scientific experiment gone awry. Now, a living vampire, he treads the line between hero and villain, sometimes even taking on the mantle of a reluctant vigilante. While Blade, on the other hand, is Marvel's renowned vampire hunter, feared by hungry hoarders of hemoglobin-rich blood far and wide. The anticipation of a crossover builds with Blade's solo film on the horizon and a tease of Blade's voice in an Eternals after-credit scene. In fact, in Morbius, the living vampire number 12, Blade is possessed by a demon and against his will kills Morbius. But devoted fans would know that this potential crossover wouldn't be entirely new. Back in 1998, the live-action version of Blade teased an epic showdown between the vampire killer and a silent Morbius. Sadly, that stuff never saw the light of day, but hope springs eternal for a vamptastic revival. Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash. Horror movies have iconic villains like Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees reign supreme in all their gut-churning glory. However, the ultimate showdown that could have changed the course of crossover films forever was an unmade project called Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash. Following the spine-chilling success of 2003's Freddy vs. Jason, which pitted the sinister duo against each other in a gruesome battle, New Line Cinema was keen to unleash more horrors upon the world. We also had a compelling treatment by Jeff Katz introducing Ash Williams from the Evil Dead franchise into the sinister mix. The stage seemed set for a monumental collision with New Line Robert Englund, Sam Raimi, and Bruce Campbell all enthusiastic about the concept. However, things went south when negotiations between the two sides hit a snag. The fear of seeing Freddy defeated again after the epic face-off and the hesitancy of Ash ending up on the losing side left the project in dire straits. That would not have made the big bucks because the general audience wants the good guys to win a horror battle, but can you imagine the horror extravaganza that could have been with Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, and Ash Williams entangled in a monstrous web to dominate each other by any means necessary? Candyman vs. Leprechaun. What do we have here? Once again, inspired by the success of Freddy vs. Jason, Hollywood couldn't resist the temptation to create another monstrous mashup. But alas, this ambitious crossover encountered a gruesome demise, like many ill-fated victims in horror flicks. Candyman, the hook-handed specter of urban legend, and the mischievous Leprechaun, with a penchant for wicked antiques, were set to collide. Unfortunately, the spirits of fate had different plans. Tony Todd, the man behind Candyman, was not impressed with the idea. He found it disrespectful and unworthy of the legacy of his character. But even if Tony Todd had embraced this sinister showdown, legal complications reared their ominous heads. The Candyman franchise was embroiled in an ownership dispute, making any progress nightmarishly difficult. 3 different parties claimed rights to Candyman's rights and were unable to reach an agreement. But Jordan Peele has reportedly agreed to produce a Candyman film and has even brokered a deal. And you have to agree that Peele is much more than a funny YouTube guy. His directorial efforts have been hailed by fans and critics alike. Though the Candyman vs. Leprechaun dream was dashed, both franchises carried on. Candyman delivered a haunting sequel in 2021, while Leprechaun attempted a tricky reboot without Warwick Davis. Leprechaun Returns offered a soft reboot with better results, proving that sometimes it's better to dance solo than join hands. Child's Play on Elm Street. A crossover between Chucky, the menacing doll from Child's Play, and the iconic Freddy Krueger of A Nightmare on Elm Street has been doing the rounds for quite a while now, but alas, the dream of such a showdown faces an uphill battle, and of course the culprit is the legalities between the two studios that own the franchise. But Don Mancini, the man behind Child's Play, reignited the spark of this crossover. He envisioned a diabolical double act where Chucky and Freddy, both gifted with wicked wit and dark humor, would face off in a twisted version of cat and mouse chase, but with a tinge of humor thrown into the mix. According to the concept, Chucky sneaks into a house on Elm Street only to find Freddy waiting for him. The two of them become fans of each other, forming an unholy alliance, but Elm Street isn't big enough for the two of them. A battle for supremacy would soon begin as they realize only one killer can rule the nightmare realm. Sadly, the legal complexities between Universal Pictures and New Line Cinema stand as a nightmarish barrier preventing it from ever materializing. 21 Jump Street meets Men in Black. The minds behind 21 Jump Street had a wickedly genius idea, a crossover with the iconic Men in Black franchise. Now, you can probably imagine if Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum's undercover duo embarked on a quirky adventure in the world of extraterrestrial policing. But alas, this match made in movie heaven never came to be, leaving fans to lament the impossible matchup that slipped through their fingers. These two Sony properties would have merged under the title MIB23. Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, the masterminds behind the Jump Street franchise, had teased their script for an uproarious alliance between Hill, Tatum, and the sleek Men in Black agents. Their daring adventure would have seen them thrust into an alien takeover crisis, leading to a laughter-filled battle of monstrous proportions. But alas, as Hill and Tatum eagerly embraced the idea, the original Men in Black stars Smith and Jones were not as enthused. Producer Walter Parks deemed the matchup impossible, and the crossover met an untimely demise. Cheech and Chong vs. Jason. If we're talking about potential horror comedy crossovers, we just cannot overlook the meeting of stoner comedians Cheech and Chong with Jason Voorhees. The comedic duo, Richard Marin aka Cheech and Tommy Chong, made waves in the 70s and 80s with their marijuana-themed stand-up routines and feature films. The plot thickened when their debut movie Up in Smoke was distributed by Paramount Pictures, the same studio that owned the rights to the Friday the 13th franchise. This joint ownership sparked the creative mind of writer-director Tom McLaughlin, leading to a brilliant proposition of bringing the characters together. In an interview on Mick Garris's Horror Filmmakers podcast Postmortem, McLaughlin disclosed that after directing Jason Lives, he was approached by Friday the 13th producer Frank Mancuso Jr. about making another film for the franchise. Mancuso's original idea involved pitting Jason against another iconic horror villain, Freddy Krueger. However, McLaughlin offered an amusing and unlikely alternative. Cheech and Chong meets Jason. He envisioned the comedic duo as camp counselors encountering the legendary slasher at Camp Crystal Lake. Alas, the idea did not find favor with Frank Mancuso Jr., and the chance to witness Cheech and Chong versus Jason slipped through our fingers like the lives of Jason's innumerable. It remains unclear whether McLaughlin envisioned a full-fledged film centered around the duo's misadventures or merely a delightful extended cameo. Jay and Silent Bob versus Pinhead and Michael Myers. Filmmaker Kevin Smith, renowned for his comedic duo Jay and Silent Bob, portrayed by himself and Jason Mewes, came close to uniting his beloved characters with pop culture's most spine-chilling figures, Michael Myers and Pinhead. Smith, a renowned, multi-talented artist involved in comic writing, television, and podcasting, holds a passion for popular culture. In his latest book, titled Kevin Smith's Secret Stash, The Definitive Visual History, he revealed he proposed his said idea to Dimension Films during the early 2000s. The film studio's chairman, the now infamous Bob Weinstein, sought to craft a horror comedy featuring Jay and Silent Bob, meeting horror figures from Dimension Films' portfolio, much like Abbott and Costello's famous crossover with Universal's monsters. Dimension Films boasted rights to a macabre lineup including Michael Myers from Halloween, Pinhead from Hellraiser, the eerie children from Children of the Corn, and Ghostface from Scream. Excited by the potential for this unusual collision, Weinstein urged Smith to pen a script that would bring his comedic duo face-to-face with these frightful entities. However, Smith, contemplating a shift toward more serious filmmaking after Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, ultimately declined the enticing offer. Despite his decision, Jay and Silent Bob would later make a cameo in Scream 3. Having said that, I believe the idea of a horror comedy crossover involving Jay and Silent Bob and Dimension's horror icons held a merit. Frankenstein's monster versus Godzilla. Godzilla vs. Frankenstein's monster is a scrapped concept for a potential Toho film that would have featured the colossal clash between two iconic creatures. In this unrealized plot, a scientist named Dr. James Bowen, alongside his colleagues, Dr. Sueko Togami and Dr. Kawachi, conducts radiation studies on Hiroshima bombing survivors. During the research, Dr. Bowen stumbles upon a remarkable discovery. A wild boy wandering the streets of Hiroshima is none other than the resurrected Frankenstein's monster. The creature's heart, previously dissected, underwent a mutation caused by the atomic bomb's radiation, leading to his regeneration. As Frankenstein's monster swiftly grows in size and cunning, it begins to prey on livestock and pets for sustenance. Fearing the possibility of the creature turning towards humans as a more abundant food source, the Japanese self-defense forces become alarmed and seek a solution. Meanwhile, Godzilla is found trapped in ice in the Bering Sea. The JSDF devises a plan to unleash the king of the monsters and entice him to Japan, hoping that he will engage in combat with Frankenstein's monster. To carry out the plan, they break the icy prison around Godzilla and lure him to the Japanese coast using ships. Guided by light beacons on the mainland, Godzilla is directed toward the Mount Fuji area. Here, Godzilla encounters Dr. Sueko, but before any harm can befall her, Frankenstein's monster comes to her rescue and engages in a fierce battle with the nuclear menace. The two titans' confrontation becomes intense, with Frankenstein's monster striking Godzilla and then retreating into the Fuji forest. However, the battle is interrupted by volcanic fissures that engulf Frankenstein's monster and a powerful flood that sweeps Godzilla away. Though the proposed Godzilla vs. Frankenstein's monster film was never brought to fruition, Frankenstein's monster still found a place in Toho's Godzilla franchise, reworking the creature as a more sympathetic figure. Toho replaced Godzilla with Baragon, a whole new kaiju, and they released a movie in 1965 called Frankenstein vs. Baragon. Well, that's our list of the best crossover movies that should have been made, but hey, we got tons of other videos about crossover stuff. If you want, let me know in the comments, and I would leave a few links in the description.